mid-80s. I'll be
Mid-80s.
85.
85.
I'll be 85.
So you've had a long career in photography, from my understanding, from
Over 60 years.
it's over 60 years. Um, how did you get your introduction to photography?
Through the RAF, Royal Air Force, in Germany.
Germany.
Long story. My parents were born in Russia, and I'm one of the firstborn in the States. A native of, what do you call that, the little island or something, Brooklyn. And at the tender age of 17, looking how other parents treated their children, American versus Russian born, I ran away from home. And what did I do? I joined the Army. Uh, that was interesting. I was attached, in those days it was called the Army Air Corps. That was before the Air Force became into. And I spent roughly 19 months in Europe, a little more than 3 years total. And in 1948, that goes back a couple of weeks, they started the Berlin Airlift. That's where, when I was there during the occupation, the war just ended and the occupation started. And so Germany was broken up into the French zone, the British zone, the American zone, and the Russian zone. And to make a long story short, Russia wanted to take over Europe, so to speak, politically, and this is when the three allied parties got together and said, "That's it."
Hmm.
Russia then blockaded Germany, and they needed Air Force personnel or Air Corps personnel to help fly airplanes into Berlin. That's called the, and of which the British were completely exhausted, and they needed a contingency of Americans to help them fly their airplanes into, from the eastern, from the western part of Germany to the eastern part of Germany. And there was like roughly 100 some odd of us that was moved from where we were stationed in the southern Germany. I was stationed then with the RAF, Royal Air Force, in northern Germany, and from there we flew into Berlin and then back.
Okay.
I was only a sergeant, only three stripes. I was a young kid.
And you were how old?
How's that?
How old were
Well, I
you?
went in at 17.
Okay. So were you underage? Were you?
Well, of course, you only could be 18. I lied. I took ink eradicator, changed the year, and I got in a little bit 1 year earlier. And unfortunately, in doing that, well, the good part was there's a thing called a TO. It means when you move personnel from one place to another, you need a certain amount of sergeants, privates, generals, and so on and so forth. And they made me a captain. So I went from a sergeant to a captain.
At
So
17?
18, 18,
18?
right? Very young, which is very different. That I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
It was a temporary rank, and I got the extra money, but unfortunately, I got wounded twice, so that wasn't too happy. How to get into photography? Being stationed with the RAF, and especially being a temporary officer, I said there's a usual smell there. Nobody knew what I was talking about, and I said something doesn't smell right. We then found out that no more than 4 kilometers away, forgive me, I'm getting over a cold, was a concentration camp
Oh.
called Belgian-Belsen,
Hmm.
or Belgium. This is where Anne Frank died. This is where Marlene Dietrich's sister was interned. This is where thousands and thousands of people were cremated and killed, and so on and so forth. I was attached to the 317th Very Heavy Bombers, which we flew our bombers over. And they asked me to go to this concentration camp to take a look. And I looked, and they gave me a camera and said, "Do you mind taking photographs? You ever photograph dead people?"
So is this the first time you were being a photographer?
That's kind of
I
cool.
wasn't a photographer. Right, it was the first time I handled a camera. They gave me a German camera from the Luftwaffe, and they say, go photograph. There were 30,000 bodies lying there, and that's what I photographed. Oh, that was a wonderful experience.
30,000, you said?
30,000 piles, a pile of dead bodies.
I've seen those pictures.
It's not
They're
exactly
horrific.
something that I still have a couple, but you, you don't like it. It was so bad they just got tons and tons of lime. They took bulldozers, opened up trenches, and they threw 30,000 bodies in, put lime on top, and covered it up. And they put a stone. Oh, the stone must be as big as my computer. And said, here lies, this concentration camp, and that they had to destroy everything because there was so much typhoid and all these diseases that they burnt down the camp and they buried all the bodies and they took all the other people out to other camps. And I'm sitting back and saying, whoa, I'm here, an American GI who was a temporary captain who moved in with the RAF to help fly into Berlin food and so on and so forth. And yet I'm looking over here, there's 30,000 bodies, and the same people that I'm helping feed, uh, they're the ones who killed these 30,000 people. Of course, there was a trial and all that, and a few people got killed, and a few people got 20 years. I still saw 30,000 dead bodies. And I sat back and said, wow. Of course, the government said, thank you very much for the pictures. To me, it was a little personal. And that to this day, I still have the feeling of, was I doing right and helped feed them? I mean, after all, they were our enemy in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, because of the Russians, and here I am Russian blooded, my parents were born there, I'm fighting now against my own kind, and yet I'm feeding the enemy, and you sit back and you don't know which way to turn. Well, after a certain period of time, I got out of the service on, thank God, honorable discharge, and Uncle Sam said, well, you have credit coming called the GI Bill. So I always liked chemistry when I was in high school, and I went to University of Michigan, and I got a degree as a chemical engineer. Very nice, very exciting. And Uncle Sam made a mistake. They said, you still got more credit. Go to school. I said, where do I go to? I said, photography. And so I went to photography. And I went to New York Institute of Photography. And I graduated from there. Then they said, you're still a little bit, not much. I said, oh, good. What do you want? I said, I go to medical school. So I went to medical school. Very short time until Uncle Sam said, whoa, you have over 8 years of education. You only put roughly 4 years in the military, so enough with the GI Bill. I said, thank you. Now I got to look for a job. They said, well, we got an assignment for you. I said, what's the assignment? Never heard of it. They said, neither do we. So I flew out here after getting Douglas, hired a Piper Cub, flew a Piper Cub over a big marshland, back and forth with this big aerial camera, taking photographs of this marshland. And I bring, of course, in those days it's black and white photography,
Yeah.
not color. And I made roughly 11 by 14-inch prints. I made a collage, where you put one photograph next to each other of the property. It was in Washington D.C. in a big airport, and a man walks in with a magic marker.
Was this in an air hangar
It
or?
was a big hangar,
Yeah.
military, and he takes out. He looks at my photograph. Nobody says a word. I think, who is this? I said, okay. Takes this magic marker and he starts marking my photographs.
And who was this guy? You don't know.
Don't know. And I said, hey! Everybody looks up. I said, what do they say? A dirty word? You're marking my photographs. They said, "Don't you know who it is?" I said, "No." And to this day, I still don't know who it is. That was roughly 49, 50. That was where they built the dam, which was in 51 or 52. That's how I wound up back here. I worked for Uncle Sam, the thing I enjoyed because my parents born in Russia and went up through the ranks, went to work for NASA Space Agency at the Cape, Wallops Island, Virginia, all with security clearance, and me being Russian, or my parents were. If you are if you had security clearance once a year, the FBI had to check you out. In my case, it was twice a year.
That's what I.
Excuse me?
That's what I heard. I know someone else that was
Right.
like, yeah, they come by twice a year.
Oh yeah.
You don't know when they do, but they come around.
They would question my neighbors. Am I homosexual? Am I a drunk? Do I beat my wife? They look at my bank account. He only makes $10 a week. How come he has $1 million in the bank? You know. I don't mind checking the bank account, but to say am I homosexual, that kind of hit me a little bit, yo. But oh well. I have done photography for probably every major agency that the United States government can have. Forgive me for coughing. It's I'm getting through this
No
cold.
problem. Take your time. You want to
No,
take a break and.
what break? This is my life.
Alrighty. I'm not in a hurry.
Oh, good. We serve supper. We have chicken. I work for the FBI, the CIA, Department of Agriculture, the Air Force. I used to walk in the Pentagon. Oh my God. The NASA, various agencies, and the part that I enjoyed, you got to get there. It takes a little year. You know, they got to first find out if you're worthy of being a photographer. Is they start sending me to Europe, and I traveled to, thank you, Uncle Sam, 17 countries.
Wow.
It sounds good. You know, we talk about photography, but in my day, which was the proper day, you took a camera, and I got loads of them, and you went ahead and you took a picture. First, you put in a film, be it color or black and white. Produced two children and a wife. Without this camera, I couldn't afford them. Not those little things there.
What is this?
Huh?
What kind of camera is
It's,
this?
it's a Mamiya 645. You never saw a camera. Lift it up. Can you lift it
Oh
up?
wow! Ugh.
That is a camera.
It's heavy.
It's 645. It gives you a negative about that big. She's taking a picture of this big. I better straighten out the finger a little bit. This is what a professional camera is.
Yep.
The negative is that size right there.
Oh.
Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
That's how big the negative is. This is what I did to make a living. 35 millimeter camera was invented approximately 50 or 51 by whom? When we had the Korean War, the American photographers from all the countries that went into Korea, you have a camera and you're going through the jungles and you're going through the swamps and everything else. You bang up a camera, they break. Well, you can't, in those days, you were buying German cameras or cameras from other countries. They went to Japan, which was only a couple of miles away, and they saw these little 35 millimeter cameras, a Nikon, a Canon. We never heard of these cameras before, and they bought them. All of a sudden, you got a little 35 millimeter camera versus this. 35 millimeter camera was originally 20 exposures. Wow! Then you went to 36 exposures. Here, you put a roll of film and you got 12 exposures. If you've only got 12 exposures, you hope that 10 come out good and perfect. One is a mistake, and you leave one film, just one left, just in case something happens, you don't use the last piece of film. That is how 35 millimeter started. Well, so there I was in the beginning of the new type of photography. Because before, when I went to school, you had cameras, 4x5 cameras. You had, I'm acclimated to using 11 by 14, 16, 20-inch cameras. That's how big the film is. The biggest camera I ever used was 8 by 10
Mm.
feet for the FBI, taking pictures of sabotage at Republic Aviation.
They had cameras that big.
What's the old colloquialism if I tell you, like, et cetera,
Wow.
et cetera? Well, this has been my life, which I rather enjoyed. You are in, you're at the beginning of everything. You're in the beginning of the small format. That's called a medium format camera. I'm acclimated to using view cameras. This was a normal camera, or a speed graphic, or a crown graphic. 30, you want 35? I gave probably 20 to my son. I got tons of them. Uh, that was keep shooting, and you hopefully one or two negatives would be decent. In my day, photography is a little bit different because A, you took the picture, you then went to a darkroom and you developed the film. That was maybe 20 minutes, and then you wait for that film to dry, hoping there's no water spots on a negative. Now you take a negative and you take your pencils from 0, 0 to 6 degrees. The very hardness of the black and white images, and you would fill in the bad parts, and so on and so forth. Now either you make a contact print or you put in a larger to make a photograph. Now you start cropping. Now you take that piece of paper and you bring it over, and now you put it into, you soup it, what we call soup it. You put it through the developer. That's a 2.5, 3 minutes in the developer. Short sock, which is acetic acid, that's about 10, 15-second rinse. Then you put it into fix it. At least 20 minutes to get the hypo to bleach out all the excess silver, and then you gotta wash it. Do you know how long it takes to make a print? A couple of hours. If you were good, you would do them one after the other. You maybe make 10, 12, 15 prints a day.
In a day.
To me, and this is between you and I, don't tell these people. I remember I was working for a portrait studio, which I didn't like, and they said, Stan, grab a camera. I said, thank you, and go photograph. Down there's a local somebody. I photographed Apollon Cassidy when he was taking, going through the United States and so on and so forth. I got a portrait photography due to a woman. She was old, 32, 33. I mean, I was a young snot-nosed kid in my 20s. And I took what I thought was decent pictures. I made the proofs, and she looked and says, they're no good. He says, you photographed me wrong. I said, wait. He says, well, what's that thing under my chin? I said, it's called a double chin. And then she said to me, and I don't remember what you call them those days, she says, and my boobs are down. I said, well, if I'm doing lift
What
them
do you
up.
want me to do?
I'm saying to myself, what did I do wrong? If they're drooping, they're drooping. If you're not wearing the right bra and so on and so forth. In those days, just you had a thing I that you put them
No way.
you put them under your breast, and you cover them so you don't see it. And those things will be sticking up because there's something under. Because you follow me? That's photography. When I was in photography, it's
Gosh.
unbelievable, right? Today you women walk around without bras, with bras. I don't know what's going on anymore. But in my day, completely different. I got out of that very quickly, but it teaches you what you like and what you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go working for, various government agencies and so on and so forth. Then I went to work for NASA at the Cape. That was interesting because what I did for most of my time with the government was, let's say I had a photograph this, a laptop. We would go into a military installation with the FBI. They would mark off a 10-foot square, and you can't go out of that square. Now, they would a writer. Let's say you are in a missile or in a rocket and you're going up to Mars, and all of a sudden you hear beep, 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 and there's a red light. You gotta have to look into a manual to find out your time is limited. This thing is going to crash in 2 seconds. If you don't push toward this, somebody was there to write the nomenclature, how to turn this light off and on. And of course, you need a photographer to show what a picture of the what the switch
Switch.
looks like. This is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
I did it for missiles, for rockets, for atomic bombs. I mean, my God, they shoved me all over. This I enjoyed. I mean, the man would write what you had to do, but everybody likes to look at and say, "Oh, there's a switch," and you push the button. This is what I did.
Would you call that mechanical photography or like
Technical.
technical
I
photography?
called it photojournalism.
Photojournalism.
But that is, remember the last meeting we were discussing photo,
Mhm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I cringed and I say, "You people know what to do." A photojournalist is nothing more than a writer of words, except you do it with pictures. So to me, I was if I could look at my bit, I said I'm a photojournalist. Well, I'm retired now. You are doing something that, if you're good enough to read, fine. But everybody likes to look at pictures. That's why comic books are so, of course, doing all this work, uh, you look at the hazards. The hazard is number one, you're going to foreign countries, which I enjoyed. The bad thing is half my underwear is still in Europe. I would fly from New York into, let's say, London. I'm there to photograph something. Then, so you get a memo or something and say, quick, drop what you're doing or finish that and go into Berlin or go into Spain or go into France or go into someplace and shoot something else. And you know what I carry besides cameras and equipment? The most important thing? A watch and a compass. You say, what do you need a compass for? If I'm to photograph this house, there's north, south, east, and west. Sun goes from east to west. If you come to this house in the morning, it looks lousy because the sun's back there and the house is in a shadow. Now is the proper time to photograph this house because that's west and the sun comes in, so therefore you can see the whole front of the house exposed. So therefore, when I had an assignment, I had to find out which way is north, south, and east, so I knew when to take the picture. Do I take it in the morning or I take it in the afternoon? These are tricks you people, you kids don't understand. I have to throw that word in. Talk for, I could talk for years.
Well,
Uh,
this is
I
fascinating.
have been invited, which is I'm proud, to the White House 2 times as a
Oh, wow.
guest, meeting 2 different presidents.
Mm.
My highlight in life, which I told my wife several times, I met the Queen of England in Buckingham Palace.
Oh, that's cool.
That is cool.
That is cool.
Under what conditions? Here I am. I got to photograph something, and they said you got to go to Buckingham Palace. I said, "Ooh," to meet the Queen. Not to meet the Queen, to go photograph X. I don't fill in the blanks. And so you bring your ID, and they check you out and make sure. The thing I liked, what you were wearing. I was wearing a gray suit with a green tie and a purple underwear or something, because when you got there, they want to make sure you. What are you wearing a green suit? You're supposed to be wearing a brown suit. So I enjoyed that. I don't think you've ever been to Buckingham Palace. Buckingham Palace has been around a couple of weeks longer than we as Americans are a country. It's a couple of thousand years of age. You're walking in, and you're walking on oak. The oak trees were older than, again, America was a country.
Oops, excuse me.
Is that my cell phone?
It happens every time you mention the Queen. Sorry about that.
It's all right. I'm not going to give any more coffee. Do you want more
No
coffee?
more
Do you want
coffee.
more to drink?
No, I'm
I'm
fine, thank
fine.
you.
How are you, my
Thank you.
dear? You're learning about my life, huh?
So tell me about meeting the Queen.
Well, I'm not quite 6 feet tall, but as I was walking through the corridors, walking into my assignment, I got shorter and shorter. Every step I would lose 6 inches because you're looking around and you're seeing uh, the plaques of all these various, William the Conqueror, first, second, third, and fourth. Eisenhower sat here. You're through history, centuries and centuries, and you're looking, and your eyes are popping out. And here's this kid from Brooklyn walking through the corridors, and there's hundreds of rooms, and there's a couple of ante rooms. As I walk, there's a man and woman playing cards. I said, "Oh, look, they play cards in England. How nice!" And then you hear, "Gin," and the woman said, "Oh no, no, I gave you the wrong card. It's a fight." Well, you took your hands off the card. No, but I gave the, and they're fighting back and forth. Now, me being who I am, shy, I go, "Shh! Don't you know where you are?" They look up at me. Who is it? The Queen of England. Well, I think I made my pants. The Queen of England. I'm telling the Queen of England to shut up in Buckingham. I go on there. I got red, white, and blue, and I go do my job. And after you
Oh.
get through, there's a procession which everybody walks by, and you either you bow or curtsy or shake hands. And the Queen looks at me. I look. We never said a word. She smiled from one ear to the other, and I smiled back with sweat. I mean, I can see myself there with a chop off my head.
Yeah,
Anne
off
Boleyn,
with his
here I
head.
come, and so on and so forth. That is my introduction to the Queen of England, which I rather enjoyed.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Traveling,
That's awesome, man.
working as a photographer sounds good, except in my day, you shot the film and you process. You don't let things out to anybody else. You do it yourself. I think 86.7% of the time you're in a dark room. How many times you take a picture? You took 3 pictures. Now I got to come back and spend hours and hours making the final result, which is either a slide, chrome, or a print.
Oh, print. And then if it not doesn't turn out, you have to do it over.
Well, if it doesn't turn out, you don't have a job. I mean, how many times do you think you can go visit, something? So you better know what you're doing. I mean, we had things. You want to see my library? There's got to be hundreds of books, and dang, 70 small books I gave away locally to the Valley Thrift photography. I used to even teach photography. It was something different. We had to worry about a thing called composition,
Hmm.
depth of focus. There were so many things how to use a camera properly because you only can take one and you're lucky to take 2 pictures. And that's if you use a camera like this. But most of my cameras were big view cameras that you had to take a piece of film, an 8 by 10 piece of film, and you only had one crack at the title, and that was it. If you don't know what you're doing, you didn't have a job. I loved. How did I learn photography? Well, somebody years ago says go to a museum. I said, what's museums got to do with photography? Look at the masters, how they paint. You'll see and regardless of who the person is, you look at the composition, you look at the lighting, and this is what you want to duplicate. In other words, if you're sitting and taking a picture, you don't want to look out the frame. You want to look in. You don't want to cut the person's head off or cut the person's feet off. You don't want to. It's like the only time you can take really a decent professional photograph is early morning or late afternoon. Forget about noontime and all that. Sun's up there. You ever see pictures um, where people and they have black circles because the sun's up and the face is hiding the. Well, this is why if you look, and I still got a half a dozen left. I would use what we call a strobe
Mhm.
and take pictures. Every picture I took was with a strobe. They say it's daylight. And I say very simple, look at your picture and look at mine. Mine doesn't have the dark shadows because I'm filling it in.
Mhm.
Something you learn. I enjoy the fact that they trusted me to go to a foreign country, which was not free at their expense. When I say theirs, we're talking American government, to do what I did. I enjoy going to a place called Albania. Albania? Boy, did I stand out. I'm walking there with a blue suit, a white shirt, and probably a red tie. I'm looking, I said, Stan, something's not right. And then you realize the entire country was one color, gray. The weather was gray, the food was gray, the clothing was gray, and I'm walking with a blue suit and a white tie and a red, a blue suit and a white shirt, and you say, "Wow!" And then you're looking over there, and there's two guys. They have their eye face down, but they're looking. That is the Secret Service. Well, me being shy, what did I say? Come over. I said, sit. You got to speak more with your fingers than with your mouth. And you said, would you like a beer? They would shake, and I would order a couple of beers. They were hired to watch me. After a couple of beers, I said, I'm going to the hotel, and you make a movement. They would follow you to the hotel. You go to your room, you lock the door, and they would say, all right, the subject went back to the room. These little things I enjoyed. Or going to a place called Ireland. I would go there, and I speak English sometimes, and you would see a couple of guys from Ireland. They look at you. American stands out regardless of what country you've been to. And I said, you guys beer? An Irishman not wanting beer? Oh, of course. They would come in there, and I would buy beer. I would buy round. It was 25, 27 cents from a mug of beer. Very so by the time I paid the whole bill, it was like a $3, $4. Things that I enjoyed. Or you go to a place called the Louvre in Paris. Beautiful museum. And that's when I began to change. When I'm sitting there and I got there one of the first people to open up in the morning, and I'm going through looking at all these various paintings and all these statuary and Venus de Milo and everything.
So
And
you
then
had the
it's
museum to
lunchtime.
yourself?
Say it again.
You had the museum to yourself, sort of in the morning.
I was the first one there,
Yeah.
and I did the walking. Oh, I love to walk. I probably know London, England better than I knew New York or Brooklyn because I used to live there. I used to live right near the American Embassy. The time I knew that something was happening is that when the young girl, it's like lunchtime, and there you would get fromage, cheese, or you would get chicken sandwiches and a little glass of wine. And the very nice little attendant, the girl said, what do you want? French or English? And I said,
Mhm.
I had to clear my throat, not because I had a cold. I said, wait a second, all my life, that's all I'm doing is traveling, but I'm traveling by myself. You're not talking to anybody. You're concentrating on the camera and the f-stops and everything else. And I realized it's nice to travel and say I've been to 70 countries, but I did it by myself. It's like my wife and I are anticipating in the beginning of December, getting in a car and going. We
Mhm.
don't know north, south. We're going someplace. Isn't it nice to have somebody in the car, my wife, and sitting and talking and say, "Oh, look at that," but to travel throughout Europe and see all these beautiful things,
Alone.
it's only in the memory. My memory, it's unbelievable, are the things I remember seeing and doing. Who else can I talk to? I can't talk about my secret work. The government come and shoot me. That's when I knew that enough was. Of course, I made decent money, but I was away from home an awful long time. But photography treated me well.
How did you two meet?
Long time ago, I always liked a a reasonable, decent, educated woman. Uh, I think I have a couple of college degrees. I want somebody who I don't want everybody to be like me. Well, you can't be like me, but you want somebody at least you can have a talk. You can talk to. I was married. In fact, I was married. I married a girl whose parents also came from Russia, and she was American born like me. It was like she and I would we knew each other too well. There was no challenge. And then the marriage went sour because of personal reasons and so on and so forth. And I said, when I was ready to get married again, I said, it's got to be somebody completely different. I love Chinese food. I ate Chinese food in every country comparing how is Chinese food here compared to there. Dang comes from Thailand. Well, to show how smart I am, I thought Thailand's Chinese food. Not realizing
Is
that
better.
Thai food is a zillion
Thai
times
is better,
spicier.
yeah.
Guess what? My wife cooks her food, and I cook my food. My wife does 1% of the cooking of mine, and I do a half percent cooking for her. She likes her spice. I don't blame her, but I got gypped. I thought I married a girl who made Chinese food, which is a joke. I love my wife, of course.
Do you cook Thai food for him? Or you cook Thai food?
She
Yeah,
tried cooking it.
I like food.
I love Thai food. Would you cook some
Good.
for
Oh,
me?
really?
Dang, don't cook.
Mhm.
I had a little kitchen outside in the back that she can take. My wife would take 5 cloves of garlic
Yeah.
and, and she puts them with olive oil in a big wok and she makes the. Don't give
And
them a
let
taste.
let you eat something.
I mean,
Oh
you take a
yeah.
look at it and you start to cry because I said, if I had wallpaper in this house, it would come off the walls.
Well, that'll fix your cold.
Well, but I only have a cold for a couple of days, honey. But wow,
You
not
eat
when I
that
married her
garlic.
years ago. What else do you want to know?
So you moved back to Lake. When did you move back to Lake Isabella to make your home
Well,
here?
you're now divorced. You're now going to take me. I worked for the NASA Space Agency.
Mhm.
I knew the original astronauts, and I worked there many, many years. And I lived in Florida about 20, roughly 20 years. Now you're retiring. You said I had enough. I started my own little photographic business and all that. And I said, well, do I move back to Europe? I said, no, I'm an American. Should I go to? I live in the Caribbean, which I used to travel to. Of course, I like my boating. And then I said, wait a second, where did I stop my vocation? And I said, the town or the city of Isabella, which was a little jerkwater remnant of a town, because in those days, when I was 49 and 50, there was the pilings. You saw the old, of course, Lake Isabella compared two different things. And I said, wow, I started thinking Isabella.
And then you
Now
came
I
full
look at a
circle.
map. Now I was living I moved because I have family here to Camarillo. I had this big house with a swimming pool. I said, by myself and a dog. I had a big boat, big cabin cruiser, which I had in the Ventura Harbor. Cost me a couple $100 a month just to have the boat in the dock. I came out here with my dog, and I looked at the map. I said, "What's blue?" There's Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean. There is Lake Mead in Vegas. You got Lake Tahoe, and Lake Isabella. I said, I went, wow! That, I drove out here
That was it.
and I see this big lake. I have a 28-foot, it slept six people, cabin cruiser. Big. In the ocean. I would live on 4 or 5 days, go to Catalina Island, and so on and so forth. I went to Seppi 21. I said, you got today and tomorrow, you show me the property. They went ahead and they showed me a piece of property, and I said, not bad. I said, what's the price? I said, no, I don't want the down payment. No, this is the full price. I said, come on, what are you talking about? 50, 60, $100,000. I'm acclimated to living in in Thousand Oaks area. And to make a long story short, I said, you got one day to complete. Saturday, I stayed over. Saturday, I saw two or three houses. One was X dollars. This one was X dollars. The other one was owned by a doctor. He said, no, no, you're not going to come down too low. I said, no, no, I'm not coming up too high. I came over here. I said, I'm going to give you $1.29.50, whatever price it was. And they said, it's a deal. I wrote out a check and I said, get off my property. And then I went back home. And they got a mover and they moved out here.
Mm.
When I moved here, and I'm here in this house roughly 13 years approximately, I was at that time the most famous man in Kern County. Everybody knew me. And you know why? I had to go out and buy a brand new Jeep because I had this 28-foot cabin cruiser, big. So you take a look at a big Jeep and something on a trailer. I had like 40 feet. I'm going through a thing called the canyon. If I went more than
With the
15
Jeep.
miles an hour, I'm looking down and I'm saying, the hell with the boat? But I said, holy mackerel, if I don't make the right turn, the trail behind me is to go down into the river and it's to pull the car with me in it down. I was going 10, 15 miles an hour and everybody is giving me the horn and everything else. Finally, if you look, when you get just about outside of the turn, there's a big wide open place. I pulled over. There had to be a couple hundred cars. Each one gave me the finger
Ah!
as as I mean, it took me a couple of hours to go through the canyon. Can you imagine being a couple of hours going 10, 12 miles an hour?
Today, wow, it really
They
freak
would
me
shoot me
out.
today. That was 13, 14 years ago. Everybody gave me the horn and everybody gave me the finger. And I was saying, oh, gee, does that mean I'm number one? It was the wrong finger, of course.
Welcome to town.
That is my introduction over here.